You like anime, right? That's why you clicked on this video. Maybe you're just a casual watcher that's not too into it. Maybe you're someone whose entire personality revolves around anime. And maybe you don't even watch it, but you're just someone who's into fiction like movies or TV shows. Well, there's an uncomfortable truth that I feel like you may need to confront, and you're probably not gonna like it. But you probably need to hear about it because you're probably not aware of how much it affects you. And, just saying, spoiler alert, this isn't only about anime. So if you're rolling your eyes thinking this doesn't apply to you, just stick around and we'll talk about it. So, yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about in this video. If everyone's cool with that, let's get into it. The world is a pretty rough place. War, greed, discrimination, sickness. I know it, you know it, it ain't no secret. And for a lot of people, fictional media is that safe haven that they can run to when the harsh realities of life become a little too much to handle. Anime is one of those mediums that can provide that escape. You see the key word there? Escape. Feeling weak and powerless? Escape into a power fantasy. Love life not working out for you? Escape into a cutesy romance. Life in general just seems like a lost cause? There's always good old isekai for that, right? And for all of human history, telling stories has been our way of tapping into this fictional world that can be nothing like our own. And while stories have been used for passing down knowledge and preserving culture, they've also been a form of escapism. And at its core, none of this is really bad, but a modern phenomenon that many people have been noticing, not just me, is that in recent years, our relationship with fiction has dramatically changed. The barrier between fiction and reality has broken down. It's like we're living in Recreators or Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where people will hallucinate their 2D waifus walking alongside them. So that brings us back to the title of this video and what it's all about. Here's the harsh truth. You watching this, may be losing touch of what's real and what's not real. Ask yourself this: have the lines between fiction and reality become too blurred without you even realizing it? Because I'm sure you may be saying, Damian, this doesn't apply to me. And sure, maybe it doesn't. But if you've ever commented something like this, or tweeted something like this, maybe it applies more than you think. Because again, this isn't just an anime thing. It's the main example I'm using because, I talk a lot about anime in this channel. But this applies to all situations where people can't differentiate between what's real and what isn't. So let's dive deeper into this. First off, why is it more difficult than you think to create this definitive boundary between reality and fiction? Well, as human beings, our brains were not wired to take in all this fictional imagery that can invoke emotions in us that feel just as authentic as something in the real world. Now, I ain't no neuroscientist, I barely graduated high school, but people that actually know what they're talking about have theorized that your brain has a sort of reality threshold, and that determines if what it's seeing is real or imaginary. Again, this is a hypothesized thing, but that being said, it can be more difficult to discern when it comes to emotional response. If you feel fear from a jump scare in a movie, it can be hard to differentiate that from the fear you feel in real life from, almost getting hit by a car or something. And we all know one of the main purposes of fictional entertainment is to elicit emotion out of the audience. So already this introduces a whole boatload of situations where you are feeling real life emotions from a fictional source. This is something I'm sure we've all experienced. Now, for most of human history and even today, this wasn't that big of a deal. Of course, we've always had our sources of entertainment, stage plays, musical performances, poems, written stories, even spoken stories. But with the advent of film, television, and all these visual mediums that can produce incredibly immersive experiences, things get a bit more complicated, right? Now, anime doesn't have these types of believable visuals, but we can go back to that idea of real life emotion elicited by a fictional source. Thankfully, no one in real life looks like this, but still, watching something like this can elicit an emotion that is very, very real. Usually, people will engage with fictional forms of entertainment during their free time, right? Most people live their lives doing something other than binging 1,000 episodes of One Piece in a single sitting. Even for the people who do like to consume more media on average, you still gotta do things like go to work or school. But like I mentioned, all of this changed in recent years because of that little event that occurred in 2020. I don't know, maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. You know, just a slight little pandemic. You may not even remember it, but it definitely had a profound effect on society. And we haven't even seen the full ramifications that came from it. Now, I won't argue that the pandemic was the only reason for this societal shift, but let's be honest, a lot of us were sitting around at home watching more TV, movies, and playing more video games and spending more time on social media than we normally would have. I mean, what else could you do, right? If y'all remember, anime had a huge boom during the pandemic, and this coincided with a lot of social media content creator careers popping off. My channel was born out of the quarantine era where I just had free time to film random videos for fun. But all that being said, now let me try and paint this picture for you. We already established that even though your brain has a way of differentiating the real from the imaginary, there are some ways it can be tricked, or some situations where it gets confused between reality and fiction. But because most people have lives outside of fictional media, this gets offset because you have that real world stimuli to remind you of what is reality, what is tangible. But what if you took that all away? Days, weeks, months of being inside with nothing but anime and social media to form your reality. A worldview shaped by nothing but Demon Slayer, Valorant lobbies, and algorithm-driven TikToks. There is no stimuli from the bare walls of your house, so now fiction has replace that reality. It has essentially tricked your brain. Now, I'm gonna be real, what I'm describing here isn't like a documented scientific phenomenon that I know of, because again, I know next to nothing about all that. This is all hypothesis based off of observation. But yeah, as a society, our relationship with reality and fiction has changed in recent years. Why do people think that rom-com anime is reflective of real-life relationships? Why do people treat a critique of a fictional character as a personal attack on themselves? Why do people believe that the characters they see on screen are anything more than creations of their author? Because for all the amazing things the human mind is capable of, it's not 100% able to differentiate fiction on this level of believability from reality, especially when intense emotions are involved. For example, AI relationships are on the rise because people can be tricked just enough. The emotions they feel from their chatbots may be indistinguishable from the real thing, because to your brain, that very well may be the case. But let's bring things back to anime, because I feel like anime fans in particular are more susceptible to this break in reality than the average person, because many works in the medium of anime actively encourage these kinds of delusions. We all know about the many wish fulfillment tropes present in these shows, right? Some dweeby dude gets picked on but unlocks some hidden ability and gets his revenge on the meanie head bullies while getting the hot girl too. It's easy for someone to watch this, empathize with the main character's plight, even if they were never bullied themselves, and feel that emotional catharsis when the loser gets their big break and the villains get their comeuppance. Remember, these emotions can feel just as real. It's the goal of fiction to elicit this out of you. So now if the viewer has nothing else going on in their lives, no other stimuli like real life, work, or school, or something else, this experience watching this anime has now become their reality. And if they don't know any better, the emotions they felt may have an actual effect on their worldview. I know it seems like a big stretch of logic to assume this, but consider this. In recent years, you may have noticed that hentai terms are becoming more and more commonly used on social media by the chronically online crowd. Oh yeah, we're going there. I hope y'all didn't think I was afraid to bring up topics like this. Words and concepts like netorare, the Japanese term for cuckolding, have entered more mainstream internet usage, to the point where people use this to refer to real life situations where they or someone has been NTR'd. Maybe saying it jokingly, maybe not. Or you can even look at the transition of the ahegao face into real life porn, where actual living breathing actresses or models will put on that exaggerated cartoon face because that's what their audiences want to see. That's what they think sex is like. It all goes back to that growing blur between fiction and reality. Modern America is in a bit of a sex recession where people aren't getting around quite as much as before. So, lack of stimuli in the real world, something else has to fill the void. Unfortunately, that's where hentai comes in. Or even just ecchi anime, to be honest. People feel emotion watching these things. And barring anything else filling this void, this can become their reality. We live in a world where social media has become a huge part of people's lives. It shouldn't be a shock for you to hear this, right? And because of the societal shift that occurred because of the pandemic, and other things, people have social media fill in their reality, either because the real world is too painful, difficult, or scary to reconcile with, or they just don't have anything else going on in their lives. And I don't mean that in a mean way, that's just the reality for some people. And when you tie this in with anime, we get people with insane worldviews that are built off being chronically online or being unable to tell that, maybe Bunny Girl Senpai isn't the most accurate representation of reality. Of course, there's nothing wrong with immersing yourself in fiction. That's part of the fun, right? There's nothing wrong with treating fiction like it's real in the moment. But again, you as a consumer need to have that awareness of what is real and what is not real. Normal, well-adjusted adults should be able to do that. Of course, there are circumstances where you have mental conditions and other things, so no one is gonna fault you for that. But I'm saying, in general, a grown adult should be able to tell that acting like Sasuke Uchiha in real life is not gonna make you look cool. But kids might not have that emotional or mental maturity yet. This is why Hollywood movies have rating systems that determine what material might be too intense for a kid to process. But even the media that's directed towards kids can influence their view of reality if it's their only reality. Because all of you watching this were kids at some point, and we all enjoyed watching our fictional media like anyone else. But again, the whole point I'm trying to make is that things feel different in big old 2025. Back in the day, a kid could watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, have their fun pretending to be Donatello or whatever, then go to school and do normal kid things and have their parents correct them if they go too far with their imaginations. But now, some kids have spent their years doing online classes at home, and instead of their parents having conversations with them about the media they consume, they go to social media. And we can all imagine how that turns out. Again, I have to keep repeating, this doesn't apply to everyone, but I'm specifically talking to the people who do fit into this category because you're who this video is about. This is the hard truth that I'm getting at. Take a step back and think about if you've been letting the media you consume affect how you act in the real world in a negative way. And I want to reiterate, this doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel any emotion watching fictional media. Millions of people all over the world had a strong emotional reaction to the Reigns of Castamere episode from Game of Thrones. But how many people felt legitimate depression over it, or felt strongly enough that they sent angry letters to the showrunners, HBO, or George R.R. Martin himself, out there demanding justice for these fictional characters that were wronged? Maybe some, but most people just moved on with their lives in the real world. The emotions they felt from the show only serving as proof that they had been thoroughly entertained by this dramatic production. So yeah, the reason I'm making this video is just to remind people that fictional media is great. We can gain a lot of things from it that we can apply to our lives, but ultimately, they are works of fiction. This seems like such an obvious thing, but when you look at how people act in this day and age, maybe it's not as common sense as you might think. Hopefully I articulated this point well enough and it didn't come across too much like, oh, middle-aged boomer rants at the young generation. I'm not the best at formulating my thoughts for these kind of things, but whatever. Hopefully you got the gist. If you enjoyed watching, or if you were unsettled by this harsh truth because it hit too close to home, leave a like, subscribe, and comment below which NFL team you're rooting for now that the football season has started. I don't know. Just comment whatever. Otherwise, that's the video. Peace. Oh yeah, thanks for the huge new wave of people that joined the Patreon for Uma Musume. We just watched the BNW OVA and we're gonna start season 2 probably this weekend, so yeah, I'm glad y'all are enjoying the horse girl stuff. But it's fiction, Now that's something that is worth being delusional about, because these days, horse girls are my reality.